Packing myself flowers. Okay. Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome back to Discovering Nicole. I hope you guys are all having a great day. Come on in, take a seat, get yourself something to drink, get yourself something to eat. We're going to be here for a little bit, okay? Okay. Okay, there we go. If you guys don't mind, if you follow me, go ahead and share the video, like the video, and invite your friends. Share the video, like the video, and invite your friends. Hey, y'all, what's up? What's up? Yeah. Hope you guys are all having a great day. You guys, I just got done watching Violent Night. So good. I laughed my ass off, and I was like, all the blood and guts. It was really actually good, though. Oh, there's my co-host right there. Where you at, Paco? Hey, say hi, co-host. Can y'all see my co-host back there? That is co-host Paco. Paco in his house. That's our drug-free and proud to be dog. Tell him, Paco, say drug-free and proud to be. Oh, how dare you turn your back on me? Anyways. Hey, Marilyn. Hey, y'all. No, I didn't see your message on Facebook. I haven't checked my messages on Facebook. I've actually just taken my time to myself this weekend, and I haven't been answering messages or phone calls or anything, which is not something I usually do. So, hey, Jessica, what's up? Been trying to get my cat on a program, but she's not ready to change. Hey, Clancy, what's up? Hey, y'all. Come on in, y'all. Okay, so today we got a special guest on. His name is Sean, and he actually has a YouTube channel called Less Dope, More Hope. And he's been following me for a while, and I ran into him on TikTok is where I think I ran into him on. And we've been talking over the weekend and a couple of times on the phone, and I asked him if he wanted to come on and share a story, and he was like, hell yeah. And I was like, okay, come on. So that's what we're doing. Let me share the video on my Facebook and stuff like that, and then I'll bring him on. We'll get started. I hope you guys are all having a great weekend and spending time with your families and staying sober. Like I said, I've been chilling. Me and Neil and Nate woke up early this morning, and we cleaned the house, vacuumed, put smell good stuff all around the house, and we've just been spending time with each other. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we've been doing. Let me introduce you guys to my co-host. This is Paco, the drug-free Chihuahua. Say hi, yes, my baby. He is, if you ever are feeling down and you think that you can't stay sober one other day, just know that Paco believes in you. Right, Paco? He is so tired of my shit. Go over there and curl up. So that's my little co-host. He'll be back there. You'll probably see him moving around a little bit. But he's just a good dog. Listen to me. Whenever me and my sisters were little, my sister Michelle went and got this dog from the pound, right? My dad told her, do not bring a dog home to the house. If you do, I will kick you out and your son. She had a small child that was like 3 years old. So my sister comes home with this little dog from the pound. My dad said, leave the dog, get out. And he kicked my sister out with her kid. And my sister she moved out, moved in with a friend, everything. And of course, my dad was like, my mom called her and was like, well, Nicholas can stay, but you can't, talking about her son. But that dog has caused more drama in our family than any dog we've ever had. And it's because my dad loved him from the day my sister brought him over to the house. He's just such a sweet little lap dog, and he'll just stay beside you all day long. So anyways, my dad chose the dog over my sister. Um, let me see. I see all y'all coming in, and I'm glad y'all are coming. Hey, Detroit Vision, what's up, man? I'm glad to see you in here. Let me check and see if we're if it's going on Facebook, and if we're locked and loaded on Facebook, then I'll bring Sean on, and we'll get started, and he can share his story. And y'all know how we do it around here. It's nothing professional. It's not going to be a big production. I'm just gonna, we're just gonna talk like regular people. And I'm going to ask him to share with us what it was like before he started using drugs, like when he was growing up, what his life is like when he started using and why he started using substances, how it got during his addiction, and then how he got sober and what his life is like now. Okay, so I got everything I need. Let me grab a cup of water and then I'm bringing him on. So y'all get y'all's drinks too and get you something to eat. Okay, are you ready, co-host? Okay, we're ready. Co-host is ready and I'm ready, so here we go. All right. What up, Sean?
What up, Nicole? How's it going?
Oh, it's going good. Are you excited?
I'm super excited. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm excited to hear your story for real because I really haven't heard it yet, so I'm super stoked. So here's how we do it around here. You heard me talking to everybody. It's just real laid back. What I would like for you to do is I'm basically going to give you the center stage, right? I would like for you to take us into your life as a kid growing up. Let us know what it was like when you were growing up. If you came from like a 2-parent household, 1-parent household, if you had any trauma. Okay, then we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll shift into the first time you ever used substances, what that was like, how it made you feel, and then what made you decide to get sober, and then what your life is like now. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute myself because my son has a big mouth, and I'm going to let you take us into what your life was like growing up. And if I have any questions, I will come in and ask you, but I'm going to be right here. Okay.
Sounds great.
All right, cool.
All right. So growing up for me, I came from a household where I was raised by my grandparents. So my mother, I was born in California. I should probably start there. Born in California, and my mom, she, bless her heart, she tried the best she could, but eventually we ended up moving to Reno. And when we moved to Reno from California, she, kind of got back into her old ways. She had actually been clean for about 5 or 6 years because I was about 5 or 6 when we moved. And so she was clean when we moved there. But when we got to Reno, man, it's just a whole nother beast out there. And so, pretty quickly, she kind of got back into crack cocaine. She had been into crack cocaine when we lived in California previously. And pretty quickly, she actually, lost me to CPS. And I was in the foster care system, in and out of that. Now, eventually, there was actually this rift between my dad's mother and my mom. They didn't get along very well. So she tried to hide it for as long as she could that she had lost me to the foster care system. And so
why didn't they give you to your to the grandparents? What happened there?
So they did eventually. She found a way, I think, to just like hold out for as long as she could without letting them know. But eventually, when they did find out, they came and got me. And then, from there, I grew up with them. And then it must be like 15 years ago now, in 2005, more than 15 years ago, my grandfather passed. And when that happened, my grandma was now like, a young man. She'd already raised 4 kids. And I think I was about 12. We moved up to Washington. And that's where I really started getting into substances.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I want to know, because I have a little boy and he's 8 years old.
Yeah.
And he got taken from me when he was 1. How old did you say you were when you got taken away from your mom?
So I got taken away when I was 6. And
what did that make you feel like? How did you feel when that happened? I want to know.
So it was actually pretty brutal. The way that it ended up happening was sad. So when she started doing crack again, She also started, prostituting. And with us living in Reno, it was just a way for her to get her money real quick, so she could use. And my stepdad at the time was a bartender at the Best Western Casino and Hotel. If you've ever been to Reno, you know what I'm talking about. And one night she actually went to turn a trick, and she left me in, they used to have an arcade room back in those days. I don't know if they do that anymore, where like the kids could actually be in there. And so she left me in there. And then somebody ended up calling, and the cops came down. And that's kind of how CPS found out that, maybe my home at the time wasn't a fit place for a young kid to be.
Were you like aware that your mom was using substances, or were you like, too young to understand that it was drugs? And did your mom like try to make it like, oh, we're just having fun, this is going to be an adventure? Or was she, I mean, of course, like I feel for your mom, because I was just like that when Nate was little, so that's why I'm asking you these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question, because the truth is a little bit of both, so she did, I think, do her best to try and hide it from me and make sure that it didn't rub off on me in any way. But my stepdad really was a lot of the issue, because he was real vocal about it. He had friends coming in and out of the house, but coming in and out of the house quite a bit, and he didn't really have a filter. So by the time I was 6, I pretty well understood that, they were using. I don't know that I really understood the magnitude of it, and just how, how deep it all really went, like that they were selling, or that she was, prostituting and stuff like that. I don't think I understood that part of it, but, I understood something was going on, essentially.
So as you were growing up, because you're a man, duh, because you're a guy, like, so for me, like, for some reason, I like mirrored my life after my dad. I always looked up to my dad a lot. And so like I picked a parent, and I know most kids like pick a parent to like, they look up to. It's their favorite, not their favorite parent, but the parent that they kind of like modeled their lives after, And so with you not having your mom, and then being in foster care, like when you got to be like a teenager, did you find yourself like struggling to feel like adequate, to feel, loved, to feel supported? Like, did that affect your mental health? Did you struggle with any like depression or anxiety? Tell me all about that.
Yeah, 100%. So for me, you talked about like, if you don't have one parent in your life, maybe the other parent kind of becomes a role model. And for me, when it came to my dad, that really wasn't an option. So for me, I really looked after my grandma, or I looked up to my grandma, I should say. She is just, she's crazy. She's 77 years old. She still runs marathons. She was an executive in the medical industry for years and years and years. And so, I really looked up to her growing up. Now, it did make a bit of a chaotic situation for me when I was in high school, which, freshman year, 2009, that's when I really started getting into drugs heavy. And a lot of that is because my grandma, her job, required her to travel all around the country. And so as a 14-year-old kid, I found myself living in a house with 2 cars and, essentially being emancipated just off the books. And so my house was the house everybody came to, get down and dirty, essentially. Right. So
you got removed from your mom when you were 6, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Went into foster care. How long were you in foster care? And tell us, do you remember what your foster care family was like?
I do remember my foster care family. Actually, my foster care family was great. They were really nice. The thing is, I was only in foster care for about 3 months until my grandparents found out. Yay. And they came and they came and picked me up. And that was, that was great. Now, there was one downside to living with my grandparents. And that was actually my father. He lived in their garage. And this is part of why we moved away. Well, after my grandfather passed, my grandma and I moved away to Washington, was to kind of get away from him a little bit. And, with him, it's kind of like, in recovery now, I still have a hard time. I can forgive my mom. She was dealing with substance abuse and also an abusive husband. But I still find it hard for me to forgive my dad, because I can't I can't give my dad as many excuses, I guess, as I can give her. And so, you know, when it comes to him, I really wish that he had been there for me more.
What
And
drugs was he on? Was he on cocaine too?
you know what's so crazy, Nicole? No, he was one of these guys, and this is kind of how deep addiction runs in my family. He was one of these guys who really weed was enough to just completely take over his life. He was the
Wow.
same way. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the same way I've given things up and given up pieces of myself for some of these harder drugs, you know, in my lifetime, he gave up some of those pieces of himself just for weed.
And he would just totally check out and like let his parents essentially take care of you and not have any responsibility and just be like where in the side house or wherever he lived.
100%. That is exactly right.
Damn, like he just never grew up. Like he was just a kid still. And I'll tell you this right now. Your grandparents might have thought that they were helping him, but they should have made him leave off that property, because what ends up happening is it ends up handicapping us when our family members do so much for us. So like I always think back to when Nathaniel got taken away. If my mother and father were in Arkansas when that happened and they took him and then allowed me to see him whenever I wanted to see him, I probably would have never gotten sober, because I could have just had access to my son still getting high. You know what I'm saying?
100%. You know, sometimes it takes as powerful of an incentive for us to get off of these substances because they are so powerful. That's, you know, sometimes you really have to fight fire with fire. And I do think that they should have done that with him. You know, but I don't want to be down on him or anything. He has actually, you know, he's in his 50s now. And as he's gotten older, he's kind of leveled out a bit. And, you know, he's got more responsibilities now and stuff. So he's in a good spot. But
it still affects you though. Like when I worry about that so much with my little boy. It just, the time that I was not with him, even though it was a short amount of time, I worry about it, because our lives when we're children, those years are the formidable years of our life that are going to create us to become what we are as adults. Like I never realized this until I started like doing like stuff online and working with Dr. B. But I'm telling you guys, and Dr. B is a genius when it comes to kids. He talks to me about my son and his son, and we have conversations about this all the time. Like everything you can do to, if you have children like I do, to be with your kids, to let them know you love them, to be active in their life. Like my husband's sitting in there right now with Nathaniel. Watching him play video games. My husband doesn't play video games, but that's how they're spending time together, you know? So it makes me sad that you had to go through that when you were younger, but I'm glad that you had good grandparents who came in and swooped you up and took good care of you. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I am too. I'm thankful for that every day. I call my grandma every day and let her know how thankful for that I am. And, you know, she didn't just take me in then. You know, she really stood by me the entire time I was in my addiction too. And she did a really good job. And I think it's partially because of how she did deal with my dad when, you know, I was younger, and also when she was younger. She stood by me, but she stood by me from afar, you know, so it wasn't like, you know, I could just call her and be like, hey, will you give me this or will you give me that? That shit wore out real quick. By the time I was 18, she was done with that. You know, she wasn't giving me anything like that. Now, if I needed a place to come detox, if I needed a place to come stay, if I needed to call somebody and talk about, you know, the crazy shit that was going on in my life at the time, she was there for me. But some of that enabling stuff, you know, that also is just as detrimental when we're trying to get clean as some of the other things we're doing.
Yeah. So okay, so it makes a little bit of sense of, I mean, just knowing what happened to you when you were younger and stuff, even though you didn't have a bad experience in foster care, that's like traumatic, dude. That's like trauma right there. Being taken away from your mom. Your mom could have been the shittiest mom in the whole wide world, but she was still your mama. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean? And being taken away from your mom, dude, that is freaking detrimental. So tell me about how and why you started using substances. What happened there?
So I think for me, a large part of it was the abandonment issues, right? So I did feel abandoned. And I also felt like not only had my parents kind of let me down, but with my grandma traveling all over the country and stuff like that, I was alone a lot. Now, when I was in middle school, we lived in a house where the backyard actually butted up to the middle school. So that's really right then and there, you know, my grandma would sometimes, when she was in town, wake me up about 6:30, you know, time to get ready for school, blah, blah, blah. I'd walk out that door, and as soon as she'd leave, I'd walk right back in. And, you know, any of my friends who at the time you know, middle school kid, I was big into skateboarding and stuff like that, hung out at the skate park a lot. And any of my friends who went to the same middle school kind of picked up on this fact, like, why would we go to class? We can just go kick it at Sean's house all day. So it kind of started there, and, you know, it started slow with stuff like, you know, weed and ecstasy pills. And back then I was living in Olympia, Washington, and with Olympia being so close to Seattle, the rave scene was big. So, you know, we would just hang out in my house and party all day as 13, 14-year-old kids. And you know how
I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I feel like that is just like our experimental stage of using substances. Like,
right.
When I was a kid in high school, I was smoking ganja and drinking alcohol and just kind of like finding my way. I think like I didn't really become addicted until like my senior year, when and that's when I don't know if you're like this, but tell me if you are. When I started taking my own hard-earned cold hard cash and paying for drugs, that's when I feel like I crossed the line, because there was a time where I would just, you know, get drugs for free and drink alcohol off other people. But when I was taking my money and I'm like, hey, you know, that's when it was like, okay, I got a problem.
Yeah. So it was same exact thing for me. You know, I had a little job where I would help one of my friends' dads prep houses for construction. So we'd go in, we were like the demolition crew. We go in, we knock down walls, cut out carpet, get rid of anything the previous homeowners left behind. And I started making a little cash. And one of my buddies, I think I was 15 at the time, and one of my buddies, you know, he was the guy that I would go to get my weed from. Well, this is kind of a crazy story. One day I go to get my weed from him, and me, him, and his friend are all chilling in this broken down old truck on one of our friends' properties, and we're smoking weed. And all of a sudden he looks at his buddy, right? Because these two know each other better than I know both of them. And he looks at his buddy and he says, all right, you want to smoke a bean? And so I look up at the two of them and I'm like, man, what's a bean? What's a bean? I'm 15, you know? And I remember he looks at me and he goes, oh, you never smoked a bean? He's like, you're going to feel like you smoked 1,000 blunts all at once. You know, it's just some stupid shit kids would say. So he whoops out a piece of tinfoil. And back then, OxyContin 80s were just so prevalent. There was tons of kids in my school doing it. And even a kid whose dad was a doctor that would take, you know, samples from the pharmaceutical reps and sell them on the street and all kinds of shit like that. But yeah, so I smoked a bean that night, and man, from there it just took off. Did
it not make you sick or anything? Like you felt like you needed to throw up or nothing? What did it feel like? And this is like what, a Oxycontin?
Yep. OC80. Okay.
What did you feel like when you smoked it? What did you think?
Oh my God. The first 10 minutes I was slamming that door to the truck open. I was throwing up everywhere, just puking.
Yeah.
Miserable.
I know.
It was miserable. But the
How old were you? You said, how old were you?
15.
Damn, dude. I didn't even know what drugs were at 15. I didn't start using really. Well, I had a prescription medication because I had taken prescription meds by that time, but I wasn't like abusing them or anything. I didn't really get into substances until I was 17 years old, like real hardcore. And so I honestly, I can't imagine smoking an Oxycontin for my first time. I know that fucked you up. Were you scared? Did you think you were going to overdose?
Yeah, see, I was terrified, but I really looked up to these kids because they were both of them, I think, one of them was 3 years older than me and the other was 2 years older than me. And then the other thing is, like I said, at the time I was so into skateboarding, and one of these kids was just immaculate on the skateboard. So I was like, okay, well, if he's smoking a bean, whatever I didn't even know what the fucking bean was, but I'm like, if he's smoking a bean, then I should be fine to smoke this here bean. And man, after I threw up, it was like a love affair, you know. It was almost sickening to think back on now, just how much it just rocked my world, right? Because I had all these problems, I had all these issues, I was always stressed out, I was always alone, and it was almost like a warm, comforting hug. Which, you know, now I
Yeah,
look
for
back on
sure.
that.
Did
Yeah.
you immediately start using oxys after that? How did you go about? Did you go seeking them out? And if you did, like, were you like stealing money from your grandparents to get them? Because there's, I don't know about you, but here in the South, they were selling those fuckers for $1 a milligram, honey.
Oh yeah, $80 a pop
You
and
know?
60 if you knew somebody.
Yeah.
But
So
you
what
know,
did you do?
so one thing about me, I should probably say, is, you know, I'm a bit of a networker. So back then I had all kinds of friends already in that were kind of involved in the weed thing, and, you know, the rave thing or whatever. I wasn't much of a raver, but, you know, friends of mine were, and stuff like that. So I immediately, after I realized, like, oh, you know, I like this thing, I immediately figured out where one of the guys in the car was getting it, and then I started getting it from that guy. And as far as the money goes, you hit the nail right on the head when you said, you know, stealing from my grandparents. Now I wasn't well, you know what? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was taking stuff out of the house while my grandma was gone, and I was pawning it. And slowly but surely, she would start to recognize all of these things missing. And that's really, I think, when my 15, probably going on 16-year-old brain at that point realized just how big of a predicament I was actually in.
Let me unmute myself. Sorry about that. What do you think the most valuable thing that you pawned out of your grandma's house was, and
Ooh.
how much did you get for it?
Oh shit. Man, the most valuable thing. God, this is terrible to say. This is one of the things, whenever I do think about relapsing or I'm having a craving, this is actually one of the things that I think back on to this day. So I actually pawned two things that were, you know, valuable monetarily, yes, but also just very sentimentally valuable to my family. And one of them was, I pawned her grandmother's china hutch. And then the other is, I actually pawned a coin collection that
She
I
must have
believe.
been out of town when you got that china hutch.
Oh, she was out of town. Absolutely.
What did you do?
Absolutely.
Load it up on a dolly and roll it out?
Oh man, me and my
Isn't it
friends.
like a stand-up kind of thing?
Yeah, you know what? We threw it in the back of one of my buddy's trucks. And, you know, we brought it right down to, actually, that one we brought to like a furniture consignment store, and it sold later that day. So we got our cut or whatever. But, you know, I still think back on that now. I have a lot of guilt. That's one of the things that I've been trying to work through. And it's one of the things that for years led me to continue to relapse, because I just felt so guilty. I thought I wasn't worth shit, right? I thought, you know, I'm a piece of shit. I've done these things. This is terrible. You know, quote unquote, normal people don't do these things. And, you know, still to this day, I'm trying to work through the fact that I did some of that stuff.
My husband's the same way you are. He carries that with him, and he feels extremely guilty. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's one of the main things. Like when we were out there, he would always, like, shame was always a big thing for him. Now that I'm sober, I have that issue, but it's more like centered around my son. Like, I feel like, you know, my parents knew I took stuff from them, and I took money out of their, you know, purses and all that kind of stuff. But like, mine is so centered around Nathaniel. But my husband's a lot like you. Like, he really internalizes it. I bet your grandparents are so proud of you that you're sober, that that's the farthest thing in their mind that they're even thinking of. But just because that's the farthest thing in their mind doesn't mean that you're not thinking about it, you know?
Yep. You know, that's funny that you say that, because that's exactly what my grandma tells me. Every time I try to apologize for this stuff, I mean, that was probably going on 15 years ago now. And when I try to apologize for this stuff, that's exactly what she says is, you know, I'm just happy that you are where you are now. The best thing you could have done to make up for it is to do what you're doing now. You know that, and she wants a grandchild before she, or a great grandchild rather, before she passes. But
you better get busy.
yeah.
Now, I'll tell you one thing. When you and your girlfriend do have a child, that will change your life. Like, it will literally, it will, there's nothing in the world that could inspire me more and motivate me more to stay sober than my own child. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
I always want to make him happy and proud. So when you guys do that, it'll be the easiest thing. You'll be like, I don't want drugs. You know what I mean? Because every time you think about it or something happens, your child, God will put your child in your path. Just like the other day when I found that dope in my shoe, I was literally getting ready to go pick Nate up from school early that day because he made 100 on his math test. So I had promised him Thursday, I said, Friday, I'll pick you up early so that way you can get checked out. And so I had already had it planned on my day that I had to go get him early. So what am I going to do? Get high and go get my son early from school and not, like, he would have known. He's so smart. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
He would have called me out for sure. So that will be amazing. I'm excited to see if y'all do have kids. That would be it. You will. So, okay. Sorry about cutting you off about the pawn shop thing. So, but I'm telling you, your grandparents forgive you. I just hope you know that they do. They really do forgive you. So how bad did it get for you in your addiction? You just used opiates and benzos, or were you doing meth and cocaine here and there? Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely meth and cocaine here and there. My drugs of choice were opiates and benzos, and it kind of spiraled from, the OxyContin days. I think it was around 2011 when they really cracked down on it, and all of a sudden overnight it was like the price. You had mentioned $1 a milligram, and it was like overnight the price, at least where I was at, went to like $120 for an 80, and then eventually you just couldn't get them at all. And that's actually when, the oxycodone 30s really started to get prevalent. And then, of course, the one for me that was the most alluring, that I probably lost the most of my time to, was H, and so, yeah, it really kind of spiraled from there. Now, the benzos, that was right towards the tail end of my addiction. So I would sort of, every now and then when I was going through withdrawal, I would hit somebody up and buy some Klonopin, or I would buy a couple Xanax bars or a couple of footballs or whatever. But I never really developed like a huge, big old habit with, full on dependency or anything with it until the tail end of my opiate addiction. But man, once I did, I ended up, at a point where I was taking 5 Xanax bars a day, 10 milligrams of Xanax, and combining that with the opiates that I was using, it was hell to try to get off of that.
Were you overdosing yourself all the time? Because that's what I was. I was a glutton for punishment, honey. I would forget that I took so many Xanax, and then I would get off work and I would go and get some Roxy's and do a shot. And then the next thing you know, I don't know where the fuck I'm at. I'm waking up in the hospital with some charcoal ass, nasty ass shit in my mouth, and it would be hell to pay because I would be so excited to get off work to go get high. And then I would end up trying damn near killing myself,
Yeah. Exact same. So, by this time I spent probably half of my my addict years in Portland, Oregon. And so by that time, when I was about 22 is when I really started. I'm 28 now. So when I was about 22 is when I really started to get heavy into the benzos on top of the heroin. And
were you scared to use heroin? I was scared to use heroin.
Oh, I was terrified.
Where I lived, it wasn't like I'd never seen it before. So in Little Rock, I remember the first time I got it, it was inside of a capsule, a pill capsule that you open up, and it was like a tannish, off-whitish powder. But I've never seen black tar heroin, never seen it. Don't even know what it looks like. Gotcha. And that's the only kind of heroin I ever used. I think I used it like maybe 10 times, and that was it. It was always Roxy's or Dilaudid's or something like that. So when you first started doing heroin, Like, were you afraid? How did you know how much to use? Did you have somebody with you? Were you injecting, snorting, smoking? How did that go?
Yeah, I was terrified, absolutely. And so for the majority of my my OxyContin and my Perk 30 addiction, I was smoking it. And so when I first tried heroin, I actually tried it with somebody who I met at complete random chance. I was sober actually when I first tried it. I had just gotten off of opiate pills, and so I was terrified to try it. Now, I was so scared to try it that the guy who I was with was trying to, tell me how to shoot it up and all this. And I didn't do that. I went ahead and smoked it. But eventually, you start to realize as a user. Oh, by the way, too, I want to comment on this before I forget about it. So yeah, on the West Coast, or at least where I was living, we actually only had black tar, which was kind of, it was powder like, and then you breathe on it and it become black tar. But so yeah, that was one of the things that was scary, right? I didn't want to put something that looked like that into my veins. And but you start to realize when you're smoking it that it costs so much more money, it doesn't go as far. And so eventually the inevitable happened, and I bit the bullet and I started shooting up for a couple of years.
Isn't it like a dark brown color in the syringe? Is that what it looks like?
Absolutely. That's 100%.
I can imagine people who are probably not very good at shooting up could probably like confuse when they are registering and not realize it, and maybe like miss and not get it in, you know what I'm saying? Not get it in the vein. And I've watched this like intervention. This is where the only place I've really seen it, but I would see people like shoot it in their muscle and stuff like that. Like I said, I don't really have any experience with heroin because where I lived, like I said, it wasn't really prevalent here. And so did you ever were you a person that I could be like this and I could throw a dart at my veins and hit them from fucking 75 feet away in the pitch black with the moon shining. Okay. Like I always had no problem hitting myself. Now, my poor little husband, on the other hand, he'd be in the bathroom for 3 hours, baby. And I'd be zooming around town all over the house, doing all kinds of things. What about you? Could you hit yourself, or were you no?
No, your husband and I were birds of a feather. I'd be in the bathroom I'm talking, sometimes I'd be in there for 3 hours. I'd miss. I'd be throwing the syringe. I'd be, most of the time when I was shooting up, I would waste half the bag just, trying to hit, getting blood. Sorry, trigger warning. I suppose everybody out there. But
listen to me, just so y'all know, like I laugh about this stuff now because I am so far removed from that life. I do not want to go back to it. But like the only people I can laugh about this with are other people who understand and who have done it before. And so that's why I get humor out of thinking about how stupid we would be locking ourselves in the bathrooms for 8 hours at a time, or, just me and my husband arguing back and forth over who's going to do the first shot, and so that's why I laugh. So I don't want anybody ever think like, oh my gosh, Nicole's just like having so much fun talking about drugs. But I actually really do have a lot of fun talking about drugs. I think that we can relate on that,
Yeah. Well, I also think, for me now, where I live and the lifestyle that I live now, what I do for work, all of that, I don't come into contact with anybody who I can talk to this stuff about. Hardly ever. And the reality is, I spent over 10 years. This is a huge part of my life. And so I find that if I go long periods of time without letting any of this stuff out or talking about it or even making light of the situation, it can become extremely mentally taxing. And so, yeah, I do kind of joke around about it and I do speak candidly about it. But a large part of that is really how I recover. That just talking about it, getting it out there.
Yeah, same. And it makes me feel like I'm just a regular, like I don't know how to explain it, but I just know that whenever I talk about it and I don't feel ashamed about it, and I have other people on here to share about it and we're not ashamed about it, like there's probably somebody watching right now who is in their bathroom trying to shoot up,
Yeah.
thinking, damn, are they talking to me? This bitch is calling me out. You know what I mean? But that's like the 9 times out of 10, I feel like how a lot of people will find us or listen to the stories, and then they can, hey, I could call that girl up and she's not going to judge me. She's not going to be like, ooh, you're nasty because you shoot drugs. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
they're going to know that we've been that we've been where they've been. And so we're not going to judge them, you know?
Yep. Our channels are like Planet Fitness, baby. Judgment-free zone.
That's true though.
Yeah.
Okay, so I could just see it now. You and my husband probably would have been best friends. Did you catch hepatitis C?
I did not.
You're blessed.
Yes, very blessed. I made a little video about this actually earlier today. I didn't touch on the fact that I didn't catch hepatitis C, but I lived, because when I was injecting, the majority of the time I was living in Portland, and Portland's crazy and it's got all kinds of issues, but they do have a lot of resources for addicts. And so I actually lived right next to a needle exchange. And so I was always using a clean needle. I never had to worry about getting clean needles. And that's the only reason that I don't have hepatitis.
You're so blessed.
Yeah.
Because here I could walk into Walgreens with $25 and be like, please take my money so I can get a box. Or they weren't even that much. But, I would literally offer the lady at Walgreens a tip to just let me buy syringes. Yep. And they would turn you away.
Yep. I know about that. I've got buddies who, used to live over here that now live on the East Coast, and communicate with them every now and then. Some of them are clean now. And, but when they were still using over there, same thing. Now, it's like, the way that I look at it is the needle exchanges aren't just beneficial for the addict themselves, but they're also beneficial for the community, because the way they do it in Portland, you actually have to take your dirty needles and exchange them for the clean ones, hence the name exchange. Right?
Yeah, that way people aren't just throwing them on the ground everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
hepatitis C is like a silent kind of illness, like I would have never guessed that I had it until they told me that I had it, and then you start thinking like, is this the reason why I feel tired? Is this why this is this way? But the great thing about it is that there's treatment. So if any of you guys are struggling with hepatitis C, don't be afraid. They give you these. I took these pills for 8 weeks. They were like horse pills. Took them for 8 weeks. And as far as I know, I have to go to the doctor and get checked out and make sure that it's gone. But I'm pretty sure I'm cured now. So if you are somebody that was, caught hepatitis C like I did, don't be ashamed or anything like that. So you're lucky you didn't get hep C. I'm going to give you a point for that one.
Very lucky.
For going to the needle exchange. Were you ever afraid to go to the needle exchange, or felt embarrassed, or thought that they would judge you?
100%. So the neighborhood that I lived in was super opposed to this needle exchange. And so people would picket it. They would stand out with signs and protest it and stuff. And there was this one lady actually who shall remain nameless. But she lived in a house about 2 blocks over from the house that we were living in. And we knew her because this lady, she would follow us home and, call us junkies and say all this stuff, call the cops on us all the time. And we actually caught her a couple times going down the street to Walgreens, buying a bunch of needles, and then dumping them at the bus stop and taking pictures of it, and then posting it on Facebook groups being like, see what this needle exchange is doing to the community, and, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing is, we actually got a picture of her dumping the needles on the ground at the bus stop. So, yeah.
There's a lady that it wasn't as bad, but the Dr. B had a harm reduction institute in Santa Ana, and they actually shut it down because of that very reason. People didn't like that we had, people lining up to get clean syringes in the neighborhood that they were in. It's fucked up, dude. It helps people to not spread diseases, and it just helps people in general. Like, we were able to help people get on state insurance. We were able to help people with like water and food that didn't have food and water. Like, it helps people all around, It makes me so sick that there's privileged people out there who would rather see human beings struggling and hurting than helping them. But that goes to show you those very people that are like that, they've never had to struggle at all. They don't know
Nope.
what it's like.
Nope. And also some of them have a whole lot of time on their hands, right? That's another way they're
Yeah.
privileged. It's like this lady, man, I don't know how she found the time to do that, to or even think of that, you know? But
Nothing better to do.
nothing better to do. And I mean, it's not just the diseases too, it's like infections. I know at least 3 people that I used to live with who actually died from endocarditis from reusing needles, you know, over and over, and then the infection spreading to their heart. So yeah, it's just it's a really valuable resource. And I think, like with anything, like with mat treatment, people are going to find a way to paint it in a certain light.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's like, because some people have bad experiences, and it's just like that one bad experience, they have to think that everything is going to be on that, everybody else is going to have that bad experience. So
Right.
you were shooting up. Okay. What do you feel like was the worst part? What was I can't do this anymore. My life is falling apart. I got to make a change. What was the deciding factor, your aha moment? And when you had that moment, what did you do to get sober?
Yeah, so okay, this is a bit of a long one here. I remember the night like it was yesterday. So let's start off around 6 p.m. This is probably 2015, 2016, all right? And I'm sitting there. Now, I used to live with a fairly substantial dealer in the area. And at the time, I was actually dating their daughter. And so, you know, we would get dope delivered to our bedroom from up the hall, basically. And so come around 6 p.m., you know, we get our stuff, and I draw up a shot and I go to shoot. And I don't know what happened. I had never had this happen before. I've never had it happen since. But I hit an artery. That's all I know for sure. But somehow hitting this artery made my arm, my whole arm from where I shot down, swell up to like the size of a football. And the next day I had all these, you know, like stretch marks and all this crazy shit on my hand. But anyways, that night, so this is a double whammy, and this was really the big wake up call for me. So that night, I think, you know, the person I was staying with was letting one of their runners live in the backyard in a tent. And this guy owed money or something like that to some, you know, criminal organization in Portland. And so he actually like told them, well, hey, since I can't pay my debt to you, why don't you just come rob the person I'm staying with? And so that night, as I'm like trying to go to sleep with my arm all swollen up, and, you know, I got my girlfriend laying next to me and like a cat over here, whatever, I can't sleep at all. And all of a sudden around, I want to say like 2, 3 in the morning, I just hear bang, bang, bang out in the backyard. And then I hear the one of the people in the other room just screaming at the top of their lungs. And it turned out that the guy who was staying in the backyard let 4 or 5 guys with ski masks on. They had, you know, they had guns and all that stuff into the house. And we all got robbed at gunpoint, shaken down, you know, all that kind of shit. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there, my arm is literally like a balloon, you know, it's like a blimp. And it was not, but God, I think the next day I made a phone call to the methadone clinic, which I really knew nothing about. I just Googled opiate treatment, you know, how to get off, and this local methadone clinic had popped up, and I called them and I put my name on a waiting list, and it wasn't but 2 weeks later they gave me a call back. I woke up 7 in the morning, took the call, and then I went down there, and to this day I'm still so glad that I did that. Made my way down there.
What did they do? What did they make you go through? What was the process of getting help there? What did they make you do?
So I was really young at the time. Like I said, I think I was about 22. And so they wanted to make sure that, you know, I fit the requirements to get on this medication. And I had my own bouts with methadone and everything like that, trying to get off of that as well. But I'll tell you what, my life was so much better than it was. I wasn't getting robbed at gunpoint. I wasn't doing all this crazy shit. But anyways, they took me in. They did all kinds of tox screens on me, tested my urine. Now at the time I didn't have any insurance, so I had to pay out of pocket. I was paying around $400 a month just to be at the clinic. And I actually got my partner at the time, who was the daughter of the person I was getting stuff from. I actually had her come down there with me too, and we both joined together. Now, interesting story about her. She was there for about a year and a half, and we both got a job at Safeway, just little jobs, starting to improve our lives. And she actually managed, through working and taking up her time with work, she actually managed to taper off successfully on, just onto nothing after about a year and a half of being there. And she has not used since. We're still great friends. She hasn't used since. And so for me, she was kind of an inspiration for me to be like, okay, well, she did this, Now I ended up staying around the clinic for another 4 or 5 years longer than she did, until I eventually got off of methadone. But God, the difference between our lives before we started and our lives after, not even measurable.
Yeah, I get pissed off at people when they say things like methadone is liquid handcuffs. Like that, it helps. I couldn't do methadone because my dumb ass was just, I could not take methadone like I was supposed to, prescribed. Yep. But I still support it 100%. And I hate when I see people say things like they discourage people. Like, somebody can get on the methadone clinic, they can get a job, they can get their kids back, they can buy a house, they can get their own car. Like, I hear so many people saying stuff like about big pharma, this, that, and the third. You guys, sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'm always going to be on medication. I take medication for my mental health. I take medication for, for my suboxone. I take medication for Lexapro, Wellbutrin for my depression and my anxiety. Like, to me, that's like just taking my medicine that helps me to live my life every single day. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
and so
absolutely.
I get really frustrated when I hear people talking shit about medicine. Medicine is here to help people like us who need it. If you don't need it, so be it. But you ain't got to talk shit and try to discourage other people,
Absolutely. And a lot of the people who do say stuff like that are on some kind of medication themselves. So that's the thing. It's a very blurry line, it seems like, and the recovery community is very divided on this. But where I kind of stand with it is, if you're taking a medication to enable your life to be 10 times, a factor of 10 better than it was before, well, then you should absolutely continue to do that. And I do think, of course, wouldn't it be nice if we could all just get clean with nothing? Wouldn't it be nice if we could all just go
and I
cold
think
turkey?
that we would all do that if we could.
We would all do that if we could.
And
that's ideal scenario, but that's not. Many of us have tried over and over and over again with that, and it doesn't work for us. And so, rather than just accept that, well, I'm not clean by everyone's definition, I really think we should broaden the scope of what we consider to be clean,
Yeah, let me just tell you this right now. I was in Alcoholics Anonymous for so many years, and I'll just tell y'all right now, I know alcoholics that have 35 years sober that are prescribed pain pills, Xanax, all kinds of medications for anxiety, depression, backaches, but because their drug of choice was alcohol, nobody even asked them a question about it. It's not even brought up. So that's what I don't understand, like why it's even brought up. We voluntarily, people like you and me, we volunteer our information about us being on medication assisted treatment because we want to help other people. But when I tell other people that are getting on suboxone or methadone, you ain't got to tell nobody. You ain't got to tell nobody. You don't owe it to your sponsor. You don't owe it to nobody. Okay. Your sponsor in AA or NA is simply there to take you through the 12 steps. That is what a sponsor is for. They're not there for any other reason. So you don't have to tell them your medication that you're prescribed by your doctor. And honestly, I would tell you to not tell anybody, because people, even though people to this day still don't take me seriously. People still judge me, say I should have no business sharing my story or doing anything that I do online. I have people that comment things about, how can you help anybody? You're still on Suboxone. Well, I'm sitting here doing it, bitch. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm helping people who are just like me. You know what I mean? And that's what we're doing. Just like somebody who is abstinent and somebody else who wants to be abstinent, you're able to help those people achieve something that they want to achieve. That's like what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And a lot of these different styles or these different practices, they actually intermingle a lot. So, just because you're on medication assisted treatment, it doesn't mean that some of the practices of Alcoholics Anonymous won't work for you. In fact, they will, and so it's like this weird line that's drawn in the sand. But I think you just touched on something super important. I personally did not share with a single soul that I did any of this stuff. In fact, to be honest, to assimilate back into society at first, I didn't tell anybody I was even an addict. I just hid this big giant part of myself for years. But, now that I'm at this point in my recovery where I can talk about it and I can take some of the flack, and it doesn't, it doesn't derail me. But especially when you're first starting, and especially when, if you're somebody who's kind of sensitive to that, yeah, your business is your business, and it should really stay that way, unless you truly feel like you're comfortable enough to share. I think you might be muted, Nicole. Not on my end. Still can't hear you. Ellie, come here. Come here.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Hold on, y'all. Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, you're back.
I don't know what happened. I'm sitting here chilling out and listening to you. The next thing you know, on my computer, I can hear from my phone. All good, don't worry. Okay.
Oh, I think you might have cut out again.
Can you hear me?
Partially. It's just a little staticky.
Jim, hold on. I'm about to get.
Hey, you're a tech whiz. I wouldn't have been able to figure it out.
Okay, hold on. God damn. Hey, this is what you hear me?
A little bit. It's kind of
Just-
muted, kind of quiet.
I want you, listen, I'm gonna touch. Stay here.
Okay. I'll stay here.
Stay on the. I'll let you.
All right, y'all. So if you're still tuning in, I'm going to just go ahead and tell the rest of my story here. Nicole just sent me a text and gave me the go ahead to just tell the rest of my story. So I think where we kind of left off was, I was living in Portland and I was using benzos, using opiates, and then I got on methadone. So I kind of want to touch on how I ended up getting off of methadone and onto suboxone. So for me, it was really difficult to get off of methadone. And I think everybody has a different experience with that. But getting off of methadone isn't easy for anybody, but I think it's more difficult for some individuals. And so for me in Portland, they would have you, if you wanted to get off of methadone onto suboxone, they would actually have to do a whole deal where you would have to go to this place and the doctor would monitor you for 3 days and wait until you scored, the right score on your COWS test. And then they would administer the suboxone. And I didn't want to just go straight off of methadone onto nothing because I had built up quite a bit of clean time on the methadone and I had a job and I had all this stuff that I didn't want to lose. Right. And I was worried that if I had just gotten off of it cold turkey, that I might end up going back to the streets essentially. And so what I ended up doing, which I don't recommend anybody do, this is not a wise thing to do, is I didn't wait for the doctor. And I ended up going through methadone withdrawals from 40 milligrams to 0 in my grandmother's house on an air mattress. And y'all, let me tell you, that was brutal. Absolutely brutal. If I could go back and change that, I would. But I ended up making it through somehow for about 2 months. Now, I am not lying to y'all when I say that for that 2 months, y'all, no sleep, maybe like 3 hours a night for 2 months straight at best. So that should really highlight to you how much you should not do that. You should not go cold turkey off of methadone. But after going through that detox down in California in my grandma's house, about 2 months later, I took the train up to a smaller town in Oregon where I didn't know anybody, and I joined a suboxone clinic there. And at first, I think I had to go once weekly to the clinic, and then I worked my way up to once a month. And then now, I just do one telemedicine visit with the provider once a month, and it's been smooth sailing. It has been 3 years since I got off of illicit opiates and methadone, and it's been 3 years since I've been on suboxone. Now, I personally believe in something called minimum effective dose, which for those of you who don't know, it basically just means what is the least amount of the medication you can take while still receiving the desired effect. And so I kind of worked my way down to where I'm at now, and I'm comfortable. And so I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I posted a video the other day where I got some people asking me, do you plan on being on suboxone for the rest of your life? And I kind of want to answer that question. So, maybe to be honest, I take such a little amount once in the morning under my tongue. I barely even notice it. If I got off of it, I don't think that I would have a relapse. I think that I have, enough going on in my life now. I have enough that I wouldn't want to lose, that I think I could get off of it without having a relapse. But I just don't even want to risk it. So I very well may stay on the small amount of Suboxone that I'm on now for the rest of my life. And I'm totally okay with that. My life looks great. You know, there are some pretty mild side effects like, you know, constipation or your teeth, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the lawsuit going on when it comes to tooth decay. But for me, guys, it's like, you know, it's such a small amount. I don't deal with any of the constipation. Now, I used to deal with that a shitload when I was still using, no pun intended on the shitload, or I guess the lack thereof a shitload. But, you know, I don't deal with that anymore. And as far as the tooth decay goes, I mean, after I take it, now, if you actually look at what is recommended when it comes to Suboxone, it is recommended that you don't eat or drink anything for 30 minutes before you take it, and then you want to put it under your tongue for 30 minutes. And then you don't want to eat or drink anything for 30 minutes afterwards. And so for me, 30 minutes after I've put that Suboxone under my tongue, I then wait another 30 minutes in the morning, and then I brush my teeth. And so far, so good. No mega cavities or anything like that. Now, of course, I got wear and tear on my teeth from when I was out on the streets using. And I think that the way in which I used illicit drugs, because I smoked them for the most part, especially once I had no veins left anymore, you know, that probably did more damage to my teeth than Suboxone could ever hope to do. So really, it does kind of come down to the lesser, right? The lesser of two, and I'm not even going to say evils, because the way I look at it, one of them is most certainly evil, and one of them is pretty much the opposite of that, right? It's kind of a miracle that you can take a few milligrams of something under your tongue in the morning, and it makes this big of a positive net impact on your life. So that's really the way that I view Suboxone. And, you know, without the guidance of Nicole here to ask me more questions, I'm a little, you know, lost on what I should talk about next, but I'm going to pick a topic and I'm just going to roll with it. So, you know, forgive me if it's a little incoherent, but we're gonna just pick a topic and we're gonna roll with it. And so the topic that I think I'm gonna pick is actually benzos, because we touched on my opiate use. We didn't touch too much on my benzo use. Now, I did say that the way I started using benzos was, you know, I would use them when I was going through withdrawal, just here and there, just, you know, every now and then. But one day I met somebody who was basically like, you know, King Xanax bar, who just basically had Xanax bars falling out of their assholes. So, you know, you were around this person and it was just like you had unlimited access to them. And so I started taking them more regularly. Now, that, guys, for me, you want to talk about a brutal withdrawal. For me, benzo's worst withdrawal that I ever went through. And I'm sure most of you know that benzos and alcohol are the two withdrawals that you can die just straight up from the withdrawals. Well, I am not joking when I tell you that I came this close to death when I got off of benzos. Now, I'm kind of a hard-headed, stubborn feller, you know, so I didn't taper the way that I was supposed to. You know, which would have been difficult for me to do anyways, since I was getting them illicitly, although I did have enough of a supply of them at one point that I really could have tapered myself, but I didn't. And besides, it's kind of unrealistic because, you know, when you take, for me, when I take one Xanax bar, basically the rest of the next 2 or 3 days is a blur, because I probably took 8 more after that without even knowing it. But anyways, stubborn as a mofo, and I decided not to taper whatsoever. So I went cold turkey off of Xanax. And guys, I am not exaggerating when I tell you that I came this close to death from that. I would not recommend that anybody out there, whether you're on benzos, you know, illicitly, or you have a prescription, taper. And if you don't have enough to taper, get yourself into a treatment facility and let them monitor you, because benzo withdrawal is no joke. Nicole is back.
Y'all. Can you hear me? I'm so now, y'all. Idea. Trying to hear you, my husband, because I don't want to leave out here all by. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's that ringtone. Da da da. What is going? Phone part is what I hear. Can you say something?
Yeah. So I can hear part of what you're saying, and then it'll cut out.
Anyway, I don't want to leave yourself because it's hard to like go on in here. Do me a favor. I cannot for some reason. The deal is you were talking about those. Will you everybody like did you seizure coming off those? How did benzos say you have to go to with us like you're saying your life is sober. And I'm just gonna hear for you.
Okay. I'll do my best because I heard part of that, but I think I know what you were saying, and so I'll do my best, and then we'll kind of cap it off. So yeah, the way that I finally got off of benzos is like I was kind of telling you guys, probably the worst way you possibly can. I just went cold turkey. I would recommend that to nobody. Like I was just saying, came real close to dying on that one, and it was absolutely miserable. So if you're out there, please go to detox if you're trying to get off of benzos, and if you are prescribed them, talk to your doctor about tapering. Don't do what I did. And then I think what I kind of want to touch on a little bit here now is what my life is like now that I'm sober, and just some of the things that I have now that I could have never had then, and just what everyday life is like for me as a sober individual. So I kind of just told you guys a little bit about what my life was like before I got sober. So there's kind of one picture painted for you. Well, now I've got a full-time job, a really good job, especially for somebody coming from where I came from. I'm engaged. I got engaged in July of 2022 to a beautiful, beautiful woman who just gives me all the love, all the, loves me for who I am, doesn't judge me. I've known her for 10 years. Amazing person.
I will watch. Listen to me. I'm you on my TV and listening about benzos, like follow your phone. So I heard you had to say about benzos. I'm just with everybody. I really want to go follow Sean's channel. So more. Leave it to some shit. And I can't even phone. My phone is brand new. For some reason, not hear me on this phone. Having to use my for you. So share with me. Life is like now. Share with somebody where they can you, and I'll shut it down. And then I'll phone and we'll put all your links in the bio. You guys for being supportive and okay.
Yeah, guys. So I do make videos on TikTok. You can follow me there at Less Dope More Hope. I am also on YouTube under the same name, Less Dope More Hope. And currently, I'm also trying to get on Facebook and post as many reels as I can. Same name. Now, I am potentially going to be changing my name soon. Just kind of want a different name and started out with that name. But you can still follow me at Less Dope More Hope. And I also, before I go, I want to give a huge, huge thank you to Nicole for having me on her channel. Nicole, you are awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And all right, everybody, it was nice to be here with you guys tonight, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.